Welcome into the Pursuit of Manliness podcast, where we are vigorously equipping men to pursue biblical manliness. Men, the registration for the next session of Tribe that will begin December 1st, 2020 is already open. We've already had men sign up and secure their spot. You can go to thepursuitofmanliness.com/tribe. There you will find a plethora of information about Tribe, what it is. There's a video of me talking about it. There's a lot of questions answered at the bottom of that page, and you can also find the link to register. Again, the next session of Tribe will begin December 1st, 2020. You can secure your spot today. All right, man. At this time, I want to welcome Casey Lund to the Pursuit of Manliness podcast. Casey, thank you, brother, for making time and being on today's show.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
As we just talked about, we're across multiple time zones, and I shared with you when you and I connected, what's been 10, 14 days ago, I first heard about you as an advertisement on another podcast, and I said, okay, I'm curious, and so I went to your website, Instagram, etc. But before we get into that, would you just tell us who you are, what you do, and then we'll go from there.
Well, my name's Casey Lund. I'm a bladesmith. Have been for, I started back in high school, so dating myself, but it's been about 30 years. And started back before there was any information, very little information available. That's since changed, in the recent times. It's changed quite a bit. But I make blades. I specialize in swords, and I'm kind of diverting into culinary knives, and also moving into just everyday carry knives and knives that people can use on a daily basis. And I hope they do. The whole idea is to make a really good blade that everyone can use, and also get it affordable. And that's what brought me into the larger volume stuff. But it's been an interesting tour. This is the newer addition to my shop, and that was all to house that big hammer back there. But I thought it'd be a nice backdrop for the podcast. But yeah, just a bladesmith.
I told you a couple weeks ago that what I like about your blades, and this is not a knock on anybody or anywhere else, but typically when there's a bladesmith or someone who does this, it's pretty obvious, that the customization, it's pretty, if I were to purchase a knife from a bigger dealer, et cetera, they're usually very fine tuned, et cetera. When I look at yours, I'm like, that is a legitimate knife. And so how do you get it to where you say, okay, that looks like a product that as you talk about, I don't know if mass producing is the right phrase that you would use, but that you can get it in more hands. What is the mindset, first of all, as you approach that?
Well, it's when you're dealing with custom blades, and I mean, there's lots of makers out there, and they're just all making fabulous stuff. Even beginner guys that are starting are just doing incredible work. I have friends that are master bladesmiths with the American Bladesmith Society. Oh my God, it's like man jewelry. So there's tons of different levels of blades that everyone's making. My blades tend to be, any custom blade, it's going to be pricier, especially when you're running a business. So you're trying to support all of this. I mean, that's not a cheap endeavor. It took a crane to put that in place. That's just one aspect of it. Equipment's expensive. Materials nowadays are nothing. Back in medieval times and ancient times, the materials were expensive. The labor was cheap. It's the other way around now. You need to be able to support that if you're running a business, other than just being a hobbyist. If you're a hobbyist, you don't need to make money on it. But if you're trying to run a business, you need to make money on it. So you got to figure out ways, how am I going to get more of these made with less effort, and still make it mine? I specialize, my thing is heat treatment. I'm crazy about that. I build a lot of my own equipment. I use molten salts, basically pots of molten lava that these blades go in and get quenched in molten salts. So that's kind of my specialty. Every one of the blades that I make, or the recent batch of blades, the backup, is the one that is on sale right now. We did a large volume of those. I touched every single one of them. I heat treated every single one of those things. I made sure that every single one is right. I'm sharpening them. But there are other aspects where a computer controlled machine is doing some of the work, which takes a lot of the grunt work labor out. That way I can bring the price down and make it affordable rather than a $1,000 custom knife that you might have to wait 2 years for. These are available now. And that was kind of the whole idea between to blow up the business a little bit and just go a little. I still make customs, not many, but I want to do more of these. um, I guess industry wise it would be considered small batch. If you just do a few hundred blades, that's considered an industry. That's small, but that way it just brings the price down and lets people afford it. I just want them in more people's hands.
Well, one of the things you talk about, and I think every guy that sets out on this endeavor to, create I don't know, I'm gonna say a brand. You have a brand that represents who you are, what represents your shop, represents this vision you have. You talk about what you specialize in. Everyone kind of has a niche. There's something you say, that's where I thrive, or that's where I get the most enjoyment. You talk about this heat treatment. What is so special about that when it comes to the blade process, or producing a knife, that you say that's why I specialize in that area?
Well, heat treatment is just generally you're hardening the blade, and there's a lot of ways to skin that cat. There are plenty of ways to do it. Some do it by eyeball. I'm using digital controls to gauge the heat rather than say, yeah, that looks right, and dunking it in some motor oil to make it hard. It's going into very specific mediums to get every last little inch of performance out of that blade that I can squeeze out of it, and to really optimize how hard it is for what it's supposed to do. Um, a lot of your mass-produced factory knives, especially your imported knives, they're coming in, they're really soft. Yeah, they hold an edge and they cut for about 3-4 minutes, and then they need a tune-up or a resharpening. I have some junky kitchen knives that are like that. They're almost worthless. But to make a knife that's actually going to perform in the field, where you're not going to have to constantly dress up the edge every few minutes to keep it cutting. You want something that's going to cut. So you're gonna heat treat it to optimize the specific steel you're dealing with, and to get just every last percentage of performance out of it. So that's the heat treat is really important. There's also a lot of ways to cheat on it. So I don't like to send it out. It's all done in-house, and that way I'm the ultimate quality control guy on that. If that makes sense. I hope I'm not rambling.
That absolutely makes sense. I mean, that's, I again shared that that's the snapshot of capitalism. That you have this. That's a bad word for some people, but if you're willing to work and you're willing to have a vision and you're willing to take some pride in what you do, we talk about it's biblical. 1 Thessalonians 4:11-12 says, mind your own affairs, work with your hands, don't be dependent upon nobody. That way you'll be think better upon outsiders. And that's what you're trying to do. As you work with your hands, you're not dependent on people, and you're shipping this stuff out, that ultimately they see you in the product that you're putting in their hands.
Right. And that's another aspect. As I move forward, I am dependent on, for these larger batches, I am dependent on other vendors, and I'm trying to get as much in-house as I possibly can. From eventually, hopefully a laser soon, so I don't have to depend on my laser guy to do the marking. And a whole nother learning curve there once I get that. But it's all these different things that I just want to keep it in-house. That way I have the ultimate control over absolutely everything that leaves here. Even the sheaths, I hate making sheaths, but I've had to do some. So it's just part of the whole package.
It's funny you say that. I have several things right now that are out with various vendors and or delivery guys, and I'm losing my mind waiting for these things to arrive. I'm like, when this arrives, then I can do this. When this happens, then I can do this. And it's the same thing you're saying. Boy, if I could just figure out a way to get this more in-house, then I know it's more on me. Not that I don't want those guys, but it's that waiting, or the whole process, and it costs more when you have to get other people involved. I'm sure that you run into that. Well, I mean, that laser guy, he's getting paid. He's not doing it probably because he's your best friend. He's doing it because that's his business, right?
Right.
So how do you, when you talk
Correct.
about different types of steels, et cetera, what are the prime ones that you say, man, that's what I prefer to work with, or these are the ones that I look for when I'm building a certain type of blade or a certain type of everyday carry knife?
Um, there's I've run the gamut of different blade steels. We jokingly in the knife community call it, flavor of the month, the flavor of the month club. Some EDC guys, there are crazy steels out there. There are insane. Oh God, I don't even know half of them. Weird stainless steels that are horrifically expensive. Nope, but I got to have my knife made out of that. Well, when it comes to focusing on, say, swords, my sword steel is an L6, which is a tool steel with nickel in it. And it's also I use it in conjunction with 01, which is a cutting tool steel. It was designed about 100 years ago, maybe even longer than that now, specifically to cut, but not cut things at high heat. Well, you're not cutting things at high heat with a knife. So certain steels, that some knives are made out of, they would perform really good at 500-600 degrees, but no one's going to be using a knife at that temperature. So the 01 and the L6 I use to make my Damascus, which is the laminated steel. And recently I've been doing the Aebl stainless steel. So that's another, another old stainless steel that was originally designed to be razor blades. Takes a really fine edge. It doesn't have what they call primary carbides in it. So you can get a super, super fine edge. Really nice steel. It's made in Sweden. And there are other offshoots of it. I think the different companies have different names for it. But Aebl right now is my go-to stainless. Its heat treatment is a lot different than the other steels I use for, say, the swords and, or carbon steels. It has to go into liquid nitrogen. They say, well, technically it doesn't have to. It makes it better if you do. That actually finishes the heat treatment after you've quenched it, hardened it. Then it goes into nitrogen, and that finishes the process of hardening it. But that steel, three basics. I'm trying to not start going crazy with different ones, but yeah, we'll see what the future holds.
Flavor of the month. How about that? One of the things you talk about is the finishing process of getting the blade right, and you're talking about rolling or chipping. What is that when you're talking about the getting closer to the finished product of the blade?
Well, when let's say in reference to the backup, which is the knife we designed, that was the one. It's a thin all metal knife. I designed that to hide it behind a trauma plate of a bulletproof vest. You can put it in a tactical vest. It's really thin, and the whole knife is metal. So it needed some kind of finish, and I didn't want a grinder finish. So that gets tumbled. And it's a tumbled finish. They call it a stone wash, and it's a molted gray look on it. Durable and just nice finish, but before it goes into that, it has to be ground, and that goes through a double bevel grinder where the bevels are ground in via CNC, a computer numeric controlled machine. It's about a $500,000 machine, as I understand it. So that won't.
Is that all?
Yeah, that's it.
That...
Then after that, which shows very faint grind marks, then it goes and gets tumbled, and the tumbling puts the final finish on it.
How long is the process? Let's say you have an idea. Do you sketch out your knives? I mean, and then to the point where you say, this is ready to be shipped out. What do you think the timetable is on this?
This project where I did the large batch, that we ran into a few snags. The grinders guys got them done quick. We had about 4 or 5 months in that project, and then they got hung up by they got hung up at the laser stage for a little while. And then COVID hit, so that really screwed things up. But you're looking at start to finish on a project 4 or 5 months. Man. And if I'm focusing on it. I also have a day job too, so it really does make it difficult.
Right, right. And that's when I say, the idea of capitalism, some people get offended by that, but you have your day job, you're choosing to do this. I don't want to say it on the side because it does become your life and ultimately it becomes what you do oftentimes after the day job. I've said it to my wife. We both technically have a second job. I have this and she has what she does. And so, um, but man, I don't want to just sit around and do nothing. I don't want, I have something I want to do or create. This is a great outlet for you, isn't it?
Oh God, I grew up my dad building things all the time. Dad was a cop. He did construction work, and I wouldn't say on the side. He did it because he liked it. If we weren't putting a pool in at the house or adding on to someone else's house, and I was always tagged along with that. So I learned all the wiring in this shop. That's all me. So basically, I'm doing plumbing, electrician stuff. I built my own house by the age of 34. Lost it. It was right during the '08 when everything tanked. I finished it the week everything blew up, so my timing wasn't good. But regardless, I have to be doing something. I constantly have to be building or making something. Um, and a lot of times I'll get diverted. I like shiny things. So I'll get diverted and I might start working on some new equipment I've had a design for, which is actually coming up soon, which is going to take away from the knife making. But it's kind of, in a way, it's part of the knife making. This addition to the shop, I ended up having to sub most of it out just because of time. And it was also a little bigger endeavor than I wanted to tackle. There's 16-foot walls, and it was better to get contractors, but a lot of it I did. The stuff inside that you see here, it's all me. Um, but yeah, I can't be sedentary. I have to be moving and doing something. It's a rare time that I'm going to sit down on the couch and watch TV in the middle of the day. It almost never happens.
Well, and I don't want to say there's anything wrong with that. I think just at the end of our life, I think we're going to realize we had a lot more time and wasted creativity or skill than what we were willing to exert. And oftentimes, as you said, you take on these endeavors. Some of them are beyond your reach, as you talk about getting help or getting vendors or whatever. We have the same thing here, but at the end of the day, there is some value in saying, boy, if this thing fails, it will not be because I didn't give maximum effort, that I didn't give full effort. And you're married, so for you, you need buy-in from your wife, right? So what's her buy-in with all this?
Wow, that was we were gonna add on to the shop, or well, I've had plans for years to add on to the shop. That hammer behind me used to be sitting in the yard as a yard ornament wrapped in a tarp. Um, and we were thinking of adding on to the house. And then my neighbor dropped a giant 90-foot tree on my current workshop, which they're all connected. The other shop's off on the side here. It's one big shop now, L-shaped. But he dropped the tree. It did a lot of damage. And my wife, God bless her, she said, "Hey, let's hold off on adding on to the house and let's add on to the shop and get the hammer running." Like, oh, okay. so, so she's more than 100% behind it. She was the one that wanted to do the branding, got the website going, and really move things along. Without her, I'd just be a hermit in my shop, probably. Not probably. That's for sure. But no, she's my real motivator. She's constantly moving like I am. Actually, she wears me out. So she truly is the brains of the operation.
Amen. I know just about everything I do out here, especially when it's a big change. I'll run it by my wife and try to let her marinate on it, get a facial reaction, try to, our wives have been given a gift of discernment that we do not possess. But if your track record, as you're showing, is that you will follow through, or at least most of the time follow through with what you start, men will often find that our wives are fairly supportive. They are our biggest fans. They are on our side. They're for us and with us, and they often see things in us, even strengths in us that we don't see in ourselves. Has that been an experience for you? Your wife speaking into you. And because I'm looking at your website, it looks great. I'm looking at, a lot of the things that you put out here. You don't hold back on the process, on any of
Lost
these
you there.
things. So how has she stretched you in that way?
Um, she's a taskmaster. She truly, truly, she truly is driven, and she knows we can be successful with the business
Mhm.
rather than hit and miss. But she also knows, I guess, what I'm capable of, and she just pushes me and just keeps pushing me, which is a great thing because um, and she won't let me get caught up in the shiny things for very long. So in a way, she keeps me grounded and just really keeps me on point. I hope that answered that question right, or not right, but I if that makes sense, is what I meant.
Yeah, there's no wrong answers to any of these questions. So, no, I think, one of the things that you said it in the beginning, I think you called it man jewelry or something like that. But I've been thinking about this the whole time we've been talking. And even, I have a group of guys, a community called Tribe, and one of our challenges was everyday carry. What do you have in your everyday carry? And good night. Some of these guys are a bone to be chewed. Some of the things that they got on them, but almost to a man, not all of them, but almost to a man. There was a knife story in there. Some of them, like myself, I carry a cheaper knife because if I ever had to get it taken away, let's say the airport, whatever, I wouldn't worry about it. Now my nicer knives, they're in other places. What is it about a knife with a guy that you just have to have one? And there's something of value, especially if someone passes it on to you. What is it about a knife?
I don't know. Maybe it's instinctual.
Mhm.
Uh, it's just it's so useful for everything. We're all from. I mean, it's hard to say. I mean, it is just such a useful item, and it's been around about probably as long as the club. So you know, um, from a little broken piece of obsidian that, by the way, is sharper than a surgeon's scalpel um, by many times. Man's been using little flecks of stone to cut things forever. And let's say a knife I like to make, it's called a sax or a sax, S-E-A-X. It's where the term, the Anglo-Saxons,
Mhm.
the Saxons were the ones that came over from, excuse my history if I'm a little loose here, but came over from Germany, invaded into England, um, fought the Celts, the Brits that lived there, and eventually everything morphed into one thing. Then the Vikings came, but the sax was a everyday weapon, every weapon and knife. Every woman had one, every man had one, everyone carried a knife because it's used every day for so many different tasks. I think it's just ingrained in us
Mhm.
naturally that you want something there. I'm not thinking for protection because if you're going to get in a knife fight, that's not good. But it's there for, it can be for protection, but it's just everyday use from preparing food. Um, Through the Middle Ages, everyone carried their own eating knife with them, and it was a dagger, and that's what you ate with when you went to someone else's house or castle. You had your own knife with you. So I think it's just ingrained in us.
You're right. I carry one just about every day. I rarely have I thought I'd use it for protection, but you're right. I mean, whether it's opening boxes or slicing something, I used it to my everyday carry knife. I used it to cut some meat in my office one day just because I needed a knife. I didn't like the plastic ones. So there is something to be said about being prepared. Just being proactive with what you may need for the day, what you carry with you, et cetera. And certainly um, I'm looking at yours right here, the backup here on your website. And again, I really liked your site and what you stand for and what you're trying to do. And I know our men will as well. So Casey, how do we get in touch with you, what you're doing, your knives, your shop tour, et cetera?
Oh, well, my website is KC, and it's the letters KC. That's my
Mhm.
middle name. That's what I've gone by my whole life. Um, but letters KC and then Lund, Lund, blades.com. So kclundblades.com. You can click on the backup. And actually, for October, well, actually, we just started it. we're going to run it for the rest of the month. We're doing a 20% off sale of the backup, which it's $157 after that, and
Mhm.
shipping's included. And it does come with a sheath. Have an option of a Kydex or a leather pouch sheath.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, please, I'd love it if people check it out. And we will be putting more stuff up there. We have a friend that's actually taken over our website stuff, so he's brilliant with it. It's Brad Stilley, and it's not his primary job. Well, it is. He does that, but he's doing it for us. So he really has cleaned up the website and just made it actually a nice functional working site, which is actually quite hard to do, as I'm saying, to get it right.
Oh, I had to get someone to help me because I was a lost cause. I lied to you. I said that was my last question, but I'm curious here. I've looked at it. I don't know how many times where you've been featured. I'm curious. What were you featured on the History Channel? How did that play out?
That was friend. I have a dear friend, Tony Swatton,
Mm.
and he's in Burbank, California. He's the armorer to the stars. He's done over 200 movies. Tony and I have been friends for decades now,
Mm.
and you need a full suit armor. Yeah, Tony can do that. But from the Highlander movies, God, the Conan sword was actually made in a shop by Jody Sampson. Actually made it, but Jody was working out of Tony's shop at the time. The Beastmaster sword, all the B '80s movies,
Mhm.
Highlander, Last Samurai. Uh, Name the movie Pirates of the Caribbean. That's all his stuff. Well, he calls me
Mhm.
up one day and he's like, "Hey, you want to do a thing for History Channel?" I'm like, "Oh yeah, sure, that sounds good." So I did that. It was about a couple weeks after my daughter was born. It was one busy week, and they wanted to do Japanese sword, and I was like, "Oh no." I wanted to do a medieval European because that's what I specialize in. I was doing Japanese stuff for a while, but there are a lot of guys that are better at it,
Mhm.
and I don't like the polishing aspect. I don't have the patience to sit down for 40 hours and hand polish a blade. I just no, it's not happening. So they wanted to see Japanese sword stuff. So um, I was still kind of in that mode at the time. So we did Japanese sword and heat treatment. It was like 14 hours of filming for I think all of 3.5 minutes of me on Modern Marvels, but it was called The World's Sharpest, and that was fun to do. Um, then further on, when I did recently the BuzzFeed clip, that was me helping out my friend Adam Perry Lang, who is a celebrity chef, incredible chef, and he's focused. He's classically trained French chef, but he's gone barbecue and ultra killer dry aged steaks. Amazing guy and amazing food. So I helped him with his restaurant knives. So that was the other thing that got me into the BuzzFeed video.
I've learned it's always good to be friends with guys who make barbecue. It's hard to go wrong with that crew. Hey man, I really appreciate you, KC, making time today to do this. And I'm going to link your website, kcblades.com. And that's where, as you just said, you can get in touch with everything, your social media, et cetera. So, hey man, thank you for making time being on the Pursuit of Manliness podcast today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Once again, men, thanks for listening to the Pursuit of Manliness podcast. As always, go to Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. All of them are at Pursue Manliness. Go to facebook.com/groups/Pursuit of Manliness and go to thepursuitofmanliness.com to find all things the Pursuit of Manliness. Men, thanks for listening, and let's keep pursuing biblical manliness.